In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, our one true God. Greetings, everyone. My name is Archbishop Gregory, head of the Genuine Orthodox Church of America. And we are presenting this video on the Matthewites. In the previous video, we talked about those on the left, the ecumenists, those churches that are headed by bishops that are Masons and ecumenists, who believe that everybody worships the same God. We are all brothers. We all must unite. Whether you are a Jew, a Muslim, a Roman Catholic, a Protestant, these Orthodox say, we're all the same, and we must all unite, because we all worship the same God, they said, which is heresy, and it's the heresy of heresies. It's the heresy of the last time, and it's called ecumenism, which has been anathematized by our Russian church abroad in 1983. Then we have the Matthewites, those on the right, and they are what is rightly labeled fanatics, because they say just the opposite, that they are the only group that worships God in truth. They're the only Orthodox left. They're the only true church. And they are so mixed up in their heads that they are a laughingstock. And they get their name from one person called Matthew. And we are going to go through his life and learn how this all happened. Because this is a Greek tragedy, if not a disaster. A Greek tragedy. First of all, he was born in 1861 of a poor family, and at the age of 11, his father died. Now, this is a very traumatic event for any young child. I think he was one of 7 or 8 children. But at the age of 11, he went to a monastery. We don't know the circumstances. This happened over 120 years ago. 140 years ago. So, but there is enough information for us to understand a lot about this person. He stayed in the monastery, where the monks took care of him well, or he was a nuisance, we don't know, but he stayed there for 4 years. Then at the age of 15, he left. Circumstances, we don't know. He went to Egypt to live with his family, extended relatives, to live in Egypt. He stayed there and to probably have an elementary education. He stayed there for 4 more years, and in 1880, I think he probably made his first mistake, because he went from there to Jerusalem. Jerusalem, in 1880, as it is at the present hour, at present time. Jerusalem is infected with the Brotherhood of the Holy Sepulchre. And who knows what he experienced there, because he was there for 5 years. And who knows, he went to the theological school there. There is a theological school which did not teach proper orthodoxy because they were all Philetists. They catered only to Greeks, the indigenous population, the Arabs. They weren't provided for, although they were Orthodox and part of the Jerusalem Patriarchate. It's just the Greeks that were educated to be ordained, to the most part. Others, they had to be married and have children before they could be ordained a priest or a deacon. But if you're Greek, you could go there like Matthew went there, and who knows what he was exposed to. It's usually not good if these people are not living the Orthodox life as it is in Jerusalem, even until now. So, he stayed there until he was ordained a deacon. Then he decided at the age of 25, 1 year later, to leave. So he served there, or was living there, for 6 years. So this is the poor man. He had no family. You could surmise he had no family that he could stay with. So when he was 25, he left Jerusalem. And where did he go? He went to Mount Athos. Mount Athos. Okay. Normally, it would be a good move if you meet the right people. Again, if you meet the right people, you will be brought up in the proper spirit of orthodoxy. But if you meet the wrong people and they don't obey the canons, a young man at 25 years old going to Mount Athos can be not directed in the proper way. For example, he was there and he went underneath an elder. Everybody, every novice goes there. He has to be put under obedience and to someone, and that someone is called an elder. So his elder was supposed to, or should know, the rules of the church. A young man coming, and he's an orphan, coming to be a monk is, according to the rules of the church, has to be a novice under obedience for 3 years. What happened to Matthew? 4 months later, voila, he was given the great schema by his elder. This is not done. This very easily puffs someone up, especially a young man who is supposed to be 3 years tested, and if he is obedient, if he learns the mystery of obedience, then he's given the tonsure, the promises of the great schema. But in Matthew's situation, 4 months. He's a great schemer. And then, after a few more years, at the age of 32, he's made a priest by his elder. Then it is at this time, from the age of 32 on, that he's living on Mount Athos, and the stories about him, that now he's a priest. A priest has dignity. An Athonite priest has dignity. So if you are on the side of the mountain where he was living, Katunakia or St. Anne's, and you go out from your kelya, and you could see the whole expanse of the sea in front of you. You could see the Mediterranean Sea. It's a beautiful sight. And then, as is now, there are ships that come by. There are tourist ships, tourists coming by to look at the Holy Mountain. And the ship is about the size, when you look at it, it's about the size of an eighth of an inch or something like that. But you could see it's a ship. It's leaving a wake behind it as it's traveling by the Holy Mountain. So when the fathers were gathered together there, Matthew all of a sudden raises his voice, and this is told to us because we were there to visit the very place, the very brotherhood where he came from. He said, "Fathers, don't look out there, don't look out there, because there are women in that ship." And then immediately there was a Holy Father who turned to him when he heard that, and he said to those next to him, "See that monk? He's going to spend his life with women. He's going to end up and die with women." Because this Holy Father understood his mind. His mind is not monastic. He's thinking about worldly things and women. So lo and behold, in 1910, he had the idea to be like Saint Cosmas of Athos, and to leave the Holy Mountain and live among the lay people. And so before he did this, he asked his spiritual elder, his spiritual fathers, and they said, "Listen, trying to calm this guy down. Said, look, you've made progress here, and you're a simple person." They told him, "Don't leave, because you can be fooled. The devil will trick you. Do not leave. Beside that, you're a great schemer. You gave promises to God that you will remain in obedience in the monastic life to the brotherhood where you live." Matthew hesitated to leave for maybe 1 or 2 days, and then he decided he's going to disobey. This man has no regard for obedience, which is his downfall. Because he left the monastery, and where did he go? he was telling people in Greece, I am from the Holy Mountain. I'm a confessor. I'm a confessor from the Holy Mountain. So he went from convent to convent, confessing the nuns. And, okay, to parishes too, but he went from convent to convent also. Now he was a priest at large, a priest that has no place, because he was from the Holy Mountain. And so, how many canons already has he busted? Canons of obedience, canons of the monastic life, and now leaving the Holy Mountain and finding residence in convents. Now, Matthewites, they make up stories. If anything is bad, which they say about their founder, they say just the opposite and try and say that, no, he left because he was asked to leave. He was asked to leave by the people of Greece. So why would they ask someone like this? What kind of reputation did he have on the Holy Mountain that would prompt people in the world to ask for, we want that priest monk Matthew to come out and help us, even if they needed help. 1910, there was no problem. The calendar wasn't changed. They had saints living there, like St. Nectarius. Well, St. Nectarius had a convent, and lo and behold, who came to the convent but Matthew, because he's bumping around to all the convents in Greece, and that's how he's living. The poor man, that's how he's living. He did not listen to his spiritual elders, and when we went to the Holy Mountain, we had an occasion to visit the very synodia where he came from. It was the second generation after him, and we asked him, did Matthew have a blessing to leave the Holy Mountain? And they all say no. And they told us that he did not listen. He went on his own. So now he came to Egina in 1910. He visited there and then left after he provided his services. And the bishop that was there was St. Nectarius. And the Matthewites even brag that he is at one time a disciple of St. Nectarius, and that St. Nectarius loved him so much that he gave him an epigonation. All kinds of weird stories, because there is a letter from St. Nectarius, and probably they know about it, where he's writing to this Matthew, the hieromonk from the Holy Mountain. And I'm going to read it to you. Egina, on the 4th of June, 1910, to the island of Spetses, to Father Matthew. I received 2 of your letters, one from Egina and the other from Hydra. In these letters, you told us how you have been doing, and I hope you are well. So already, even in this letter, it shows you he's going from island to island, to place. There's no stability. Then St. Nectarius continues, I went down to the city on Sunday and was made aware that the work of a spiritual father has been restricted. This was made known to all by a public encyclical issued by the Holy Synod, which prohibits traveling spiritual fathers, those outside of the diocese, from hearing confessions without the written permission of the bishop of that diocese. And if you want to read between the lines, this Matthew was causing a lot of confusion. And therefore the bishops got together and said, stop. We're not going to have traveling spiritual fathers because he's under no one. He doesn't have a bishop. Traveling spiritual fathers. Who ever heard of such a thing? Okay, it continues. In accordance with this encyclical, I believe that it is impossible for you to return to Egina for the purpose of hearing confessions. Furthermore, it is unnecessary for you to come here even for a simple visit. Now, me reading between the lines, I would say they don't want him back. He wasn't a good visitor. We did request permission on your behalf from the Most Blessed Metropolitan for you to hear confessions of the Christian people in Egina. We tried to get them to give permission to go to Egina. That's the capital of the island of Egina. But he continues, however, our request was denied because by divine grace, we all have enough confessors to fulfill the needs of our monastery. The Holy Synod, this is what St. Nectarius wrote now, the Holy Synod does not wish for you to be a confessor, nor do they permit you to be one. In order to prevent a scandal, now what would be a scandal? Would be for him to go there and say, I'm a confessor in disobedience to the Holy Synod, is what a scandal would be. Because now everybody knows, St. Nectarius told him, the Synod, the Holy Synod in Athens, does not wish for you to be a confessor, nor do they permit you to be one. Then he says, in order to prevent a scandal, I am notifying you that it is unnecessary for you to go through the trouble to come here. Write to me where I should send your money and your things, so that you may safely receive them. Cipriani told me that you instructed her to inform me that I should pay for all the expenses you incurred in the cell during your stay here. It is my wish for you to write to me the amount that I should pay. Now, what kind of expenses is there that someone who is living in a cell has? He's supposed to be there just doing his prayers. So what are all the expenses that he wants Bishop Nectarius to pay? I wonder what he was doing. So when a monk visits a convent, he's given a cell, usually outside the convent, where he stays. Now, Matthew is saying that he told one of the nuns that St. Nectarius should pay for all the expenses he incurred when he was staying with them in his cell. Accept my fatherly prayers and blessings, with which I remain a blesser in the Lord. Nectarius of Pandopoulos. Okay. So we see the synod didn't want him as a vagabond priest going around with no bishop, because Mount Athos, there's no one bishop over a priest that could tell him. So he's a runaway. In actuality, he's a runaway with no controlling hierarch over him. If he would obey, though, the Synod of Greece, which has no jurisdictions on Mount Athos. The jurisdiction over Mount Athos is the ecumenical patriarch, is the patriarch of Constantinople. So he's a vagabond priest. No one can tell him to do anything. So now he's discouraged. He learns that the Holy Synod does not want him to be a confessor. It must have shattered him. So he desires, according to the history, he wants to become a martyr. Okay, so we have a priest that is in prelest. He leaves the holy mountain without a blessing, and now he's out in the world going about, and he wants to go to martyrdom. So he gets his friend, and they say, let's go to martyrdom. Now this is what a person in prelest thinks. Let's go to martyrdom, and we'll become saints. After all, life is very bad, and let's let the Turks kill us, and we will be martyrs. So he asks who? The advice of his spiritual fathers. But then he also asks St. Nectarius. He writes him a letter. And St. Nectarius writes him back, and he says, before you receive advice from virtuous fathers, I should have said he was going to ask virtuous fathers who are in the world, before you receive advice from virtuous fathers, do not proceed to seek martyrdom. And as usual, he disobeyed. He disobeyed. So he got on a boat and off he goes to Constantinople, and with his friend or friends, I don't know how many they were going to go confess the faith. They said, look, we're going to be put in pain, so let's have a few drinks. And so they went and got drunk. And after they recovered from their stupor, the desire for martyrdom all of a sudden just left. No martyrdom. So how can a monk, a great schema monk of the Holy Mountain, a priest monk, a confessor, and supposedly a confessor of many monasteries and convents, all of a sudden get drunk? So where did he go? He went back to the Holy Mountain. Yes. And that was around when he was around 60. It looks like he was out in the world for 13 years. Then he went back to the Holy Mountain. And then a year later, he leaves again because the calendar was changed. The calendar was changed, and he used this as a reason to get out of the Holy Mountain again. Because the Holy Mountain is like a monastery. It's a big monastery. It's the garden of the Mother of God, but he couldn't wait to get out. So he found the excuse. The calendar was changed. So at the age of 63 in 1924, he leaves the Holy Mountain on his own to save the country, to save the church. And again, he goes from convent to convent and even starts convents. So he found, in a few years, a woman, a factory worker, and she must have been very attached to him and believed him and was wowed because he's a monk from the Holy Mountain. And she left her factory and she decided she's going to become a nun under Bishop Matthew, and Bishop Matthew and her started a convent. They bought some land, and just like happens here in America, you have someone that comes, like Father Ephraim in Arizona. He's a monk from the Holy Mountain, and Greek people can't just fall over each other to give them money so they could do whatever they want. So it probably happened there, because he started not one, probably two or more convents. But this convent is where he decided to reside. This is where he was living. He was living in the convent of Keratea, which is it's south of Athens. And then the calendar was changed, and hundreds of thousands, literally hundreds of thousands of people did not want to follow the new calendar that was being introduced. They wanted to stay on the old calendar. And so our Father Matthew, he's a monk from the Holy Mountain, also preaching against this calendar change. He was there encouraging the people, I'm assuming. Then after 11 years of being out in the world, and by the way, to reside at a convent is also against the canons for any man, especially a clergyman. So being out in the world for 11 years, then 3 bishops finally left the New Calendar Church and said, we want to lead a million old calendars in Greece who refused to accept the new calendar of the Pope, because that's why it was changed, to follow this modernism that was sweeping the world in the 20th century, the beginning of the 20th century. And so these 3 bishops came out, and immediately 1 million people said, you are our bishops. Okay. And they were going to be persecuted. Now, if an Orthodox person persecutes you, it doesn't make him unorthodox. It makes him a sinner. That's all. That's what I want to say. So, they were going to be persecuted by the state church, which is still Orthodox at that time. But acting very sinfully, in that they were persecuting. How persecuting? Well, most of the time it's by dispersing crowds that were gathered to celebrate a feast on the old calendar. But sometimes it got out of hand, and the police that they sent used too much force, and it hurt people, and even caused the death of someone. It doesn't change the fact that the person who sent them, and probably the policemen, were Orthodox, but they were sinful in what they were doing. It's no reason to say that they were outside the church. No, they were in the church doing something wrong. This is what the Matthewites say, that at the moment the calendar was changed to the new calendar, then everybody who accepted it or were in communion with them is outside the church. And they are the only ones who are Orthodox. Everybody else who belongs or follows the new calendar or is in communion with the new calendars, they are outside the church. But the fact remains that the bishops who came out were from the new calendar church, and they received 1 million followers, and they knew they were going to be persecuted. How? They were going to be put in jail. They were going to be isolated. That's all, which is bad enough. So to resist against this, they ordained 4 new bishops. And you got to say to yourself, all right, these are new calendars. They've been in the new calendar church for 11 years. And now they come to this 1 million group of old calendars. Now, how are they supposed to know the candidates that are put before them to ordain? Because they wanted to ordain bishops before the persecution starts. So would there be at least 7 bishops with them? And so they ordained 3 others that probably they knew, and they made them ruling bishops over cities. And then they heard about this Matthew, and for some reason it was a mistake, but they all regretted it. They all regretted it with bitterness. They ordained him a vicar-bishop, though. A vicar-bishop does not have the authority to ordain anybody without the permission of his synod or the bishop over him. Okay, so now in 1937 he was made a bishop, living in a convent. Then, 2 years later, he finds fault with the synod. And as can be expected, because he's a person that has no obedience, has no understanding of the holy canons, he breaks the canon of the church and breaks away from his synod, which makes him liable to be deposed. Okay. Then, after saying that he is the only bishop left, because the bishops who ordained him would not confirm his idea that all the old calendars are the only ones, we are the only ones that are Orthodox, and the new calendar church, the state church, and everybody that's in communion with them, they're outside the church and graceless. Who in their right mind would say that? Because that means the church ceased to exist. The church, the Orthodox Church, lost all the grace that it had in 1924. So, because they would not agree with him, he left them and started his own church. And they are the ones that are called the Matthewites. The Matthewites are schismatics, if not heretics, when they talk about bizarre things like the grace of God has left all of Orthodoxy and they are the only bishops left because of the calendar. Because of the calendar. Now he's getting old. He was 76 years old when he broke away from his synod. And no one would, in reality, join him to ordain anybody after him, because he was the only bishop who thought this way. And no one wanted to be with him. So now he's getting old. He's getting to be 80. And then older. And then something happened. He had a stroke. He had a stroke that paralyzed the right half of his body. He couldn't make the cross anymore. And if he wanted to ordain priests, he couldn't put his hand on them. He had a dead hand. It seems like somehow God knew what this man was planning or thinking of doing, or maybe what those around him were planning on doing. Because when he became 87 years old, he decided, I'm the only Orthodox person left in the world, only Orthodox bishop, and I have to ordain someone, and I have no other bishops in the world that are truly Orthodox, so I'm going to ordain someone by myself. Okay, and here he goes again and breaks another canon. So you could say the Matthewites are the canon breakers. And they even make their own canons and break them. So he lives a couple of more years and then dies. So he finished his course in 1950. Now, shall we go on? In 1948, when he was living at the convent, he was living in the convent. This is the timeline of the Matthewites after Matthew died. September 1948. This is perhaps after he had his one-handed... Oh, this explains it. September 1948, Vicar-Bishop Matthew of Brestina consecrates Bishop Spridon of Cyprus. Bishop Matthew was half paralyzed, so that his paralyzed right hand had to be lowered and held onto the head of the ordained in the altar by the Abbess Mariam. This consecration was uncanonical, not only because it was carried out by one bishop only, but also because Matthew himself was a vicar bishop, and vicar bishops can ordain nobody higher than a subdeacon without the permission of their metropolitan. Look at Canon 10 of Antioch. This action scandalizes many of the Matthewite clergy who witnessed this act, and then they left him. Okay. So he couldn't do it by himself. He had to have the abbess. This abbess, Mariam was her name. Then, in 1949, villagers around the convent in Keratea complain about screams coming from the convent. Passers-by report screams and moaning from the compound, but officials did nothing, as even doctors were not permitted on the grounds by the order of the abbess. Remember, he took this factory worker and made her an abbess. And I guarantee you, she did not live under obedience to any woman whatsoever. She's made an abbess. This is before Matthew died. In May 1950, Vicar-Bishop Matthew dies, leaving a synod of uncanonically ordained bishops. He leaves behind a church named after him, the Matthewites, founded on the breaking of holy canons. November 1950, government officials in Attica, Greece, received many accusations and reports of inhumane treatment of children occurring in the Matthewite women's convent in Keratea. Then, in December, 85 government officials and police officers at 6 o'clock in the morning invade the Matthewite convent in Keratea. They find 36 boys and girls, stunted in growth, pale, frightened. They are all transported to the Children's Hospital in Lavrion. Accusations abounded by neighbors of the screaming sounds coming from the convent, of the torturing of children, and their disappearance only to be known later that they died of tuberculosis and buried on convent property. For many years, the abbess Mariam had forbidden any doctors from entering the convent. Abbess Mariam of the Matthewite Keratea convent in 1952, along with other nuns and monks, are arrested. It was learned that Mariam had amassed a fortune of some $150,000. That's back in 1950. By embezzling the dowries of Greek women who joined the convent. And there are also reports of abortions of women that came. It's horrible. Then, after 1 year of investigation, the trial of Mariam Sulakitu, abbess of the Keratea convent, along with other nuns and monks, begins. The first trial lasted 12 days. 41 witnesses denounced the gruesome details of life in the Keratea monastery. At one point, the prosecutor interrupted a witness and says, quote, Keratea convent is a disgrace for all of Greece. The hairs of my head are standing up. Just think, 150 girls with tuberculosis died there. What a sight it must have been to be at that trial where 41 witnesses talked about the gruesome details. Indeed, the revelations that proceeded from the trial shocked the nation of Greece. Abbess Mariam and another nun were sentenced to 10 years in prison. Another nun was given 3 years sentence, and a Matthewite bishop received 1 year in prison, sentenced for extortion, embezzlement, fraud, and other offenses. Now, this Matthewite bishop this is 1950. This is years after Matthew died. Another trial had to be in 1953. The trial of Abbess Mariam is reopened. It will take 3 trials to cover all the charges. She is arrested now on 23 charges, including murder, fraud, embezzlement, abduction, and assault. She is sentenced to 16 years in prison. According to sworn medical testimony at the trial, it was shown that as a result of the severe beatings Abbess Mariam imposed, at least 177 known inmates died at the Convent of Horrors in the town of Keretea. It's unbelievable, because things like that don't happen in Orthodoxy. This you can read about in Roman Catholic convents, but in Orthodox convents, this is unheard of. No wonder it shocked all of Greece. In 1954, Abbess Mariam Soulakitou dies in the Avirion prison at the age of 71. She has become known as the worst mass murderess in modern Greek history. She and her elder Matthew, the prince and princess of Prelest, they're called, hath brought shame upon the old calendar movement in Greece. All the gruesome details of the merciless Mariam, the murders, the tortures of innocent boys and girls, hung upside down, naked, and beaten to unconsciousness, and inflicting tuberculosis on innocent young people. They inflicted tuberculosis. They gave them things to eat that gave them tuberculosis. Caging some children like animals, resorting to starvation, homicide, fraud, forgery of wills, extortion, financial scandals, brainwashing, all in order to be sent to paradise without sin, quote unquote. That's what she was thinking. To purge the new recruits of their demons, because she taught and practiced religious beatings on her followers as the only means of obtaining salvation. All the repulsive accounts are not written here, but they are all readily available in many, many Greek newspaper reports from that time. Okay, so things like this don't happen in a truly Orthodox environment or in the church. It just doesn't happen. Yes, you could see it happens with heretics, but in Orthodoxy, it does not happen, except with the Matthewites. Because the Matthewites are on the fringe. You cannot call them Orthodox because they break so many rules and traditions and the faith. You can't. They're a scandal. So, now I will continue with talking about all of their canonical mistakes, which is enough for a person to leave them. If what we have just said is not enough to raise a person to awareness that these people are in deep, deep prelest, we are going to explain more.